Hi, folks. If any of you are early birds, go ahead and put your name in there so I can keep a count of absences and presences. Is that the right way you say it? Whew, boy, good morning, guys. Or I should say good afternoon, shouldn't I? Jason, Courtney, Shay, Mason. Any luck at finding anything, Mason, that you might have hidden from yourself? I think I told you my son did that. Went through all the steps to get everything canceled and remade, and he found it. I hope you do too, so nobody's going to use it improperly. Okay, let's see what we got here. Okay, Jason's here. And Courtney's here. Shay, good. Good to see you, Shay, or hear you, I guess I should say. Hey, Nani, Mason. Let's see. Okay, Madison Oaks is here. Shaniqua. Hope you're all right. Hi, Elizabeth. Hope you're well. Tamika. Okay. And Katie. Well, that's just about all that section. I don't have anybody in here from section 6. You haven't found it, Mason. Well, I hope nobody misuses that stuff. I know you got it on lockdown. That's good. It sure is an inconvenience, though, isn't it? A lot of time-consuming behavior when you do something like that. Okay. Well, that's just about everybody in section 5. We'll wait for section 6 to get on there. Let's see, Shaniqua, I think we got into chapter 11, a little bit about the eye. Where did we finish with the eye? Seems like it was looking at the pupil, looking at the iris and the circular muscle and the radial muscle and so forth. James? Ooh, we have not started the eye yet. Okay, so we've got to do that. All right. Excuse me. All right, well, we'll do that this morning, then. Yes. Table 11.3. Okay, that was about the neurotransmitters. You're correct, Shaniqua. You and Elizabeth are right on the mark. Thank you. Okay, we've got a few more people to come in. From section 6. Give them a few minutes. Well, we had a nice time this morning at 9:30. They could hear me. Maybe they've beefed up the internet. I don't know how you do that. Increase your bandwidth, or I'm not sure what they did, but it worked. Nobody was complaining. I hope we can do that today. Hi, Kira. Hopefully we won't have some rascal on the same streaming as we're doing now. Maybe go bug somebody else like we had Tuesday. Okay, well, I guess the other folks are having a difficult time getting on, but you know how that goes. So we will go ahead and start. So let's look into chapter 15. They want us to look at a couple of the special senses. And boy, those are just something that really thrills me to look at, to read at, to try to comprehend it. So we're gonna start on page 546, and we're gonna look at the eye. I don't know if you've ever been exposed to the eye before. You probably know about rods and cones and things like that, and irises and pupils and so forth. But all those structures that come together to produce that organ, you have to just, at least I do, I have to just almost hang my jaw in amazement at the complexity, the intricacies of the eye and the ear. Oh, and they come from one cell. Hi, Cameron. Glad you're here. Where are we? There we go. Oh, here comes a few more. Macula. Okay, good. Gotcha. We're on page 546. And Michael, okay. Got you covered there, Michael. And Anna Grace and Malibu. Okay. Okay, Malibu, you're here twice. Okay. And Anna Grace. Okay. Michaela's here. Destiny. Okay. Destiny, good. Nice to see you here. Must be a little challenge to get on sometime, huh? Me too. Page 546. We're going to begin chapter 15. We're going to look at the eye. So in your textbook, the first thing they talk about on page 546 are the accessory structures of the eye. Not the ball itself, but the other components that help protect it. So let's look on the second column. Second column of page 546. I guess you can see me, right? And you can hear me. Excuse me. Voice coming through well? The audio doing okay? How about it, Destiny? Is it coming through well? Thank you, Shaniqua. Okay, good. Coming through good. So as you look in the second column, you see eyelids. And as you come down to the second line, you see what they do. Hi, Nani. Let me mark you present. Okay. And so they protect our eye from objects that might injure the eye. I want you to come down, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lines in that paragraph. And you see the italicized, not italicized, but the parenthesized figure 15.8b, but look at the sentence afterward. And we're talking about the eyelids. So you see it says sebaceous glands. They're called tarsal glands, are located within the tarsal plate. Now, you don't have to know all that. You just want to know that there's some sebaceous glands in the eyelids. We're not going to get into all the other stuff, but just make a little note. You have sebaceous glands in your eyelids, and you see they produce an oil to prevent the eyelids sticking together. Now, again, there's probably some sort of homeostasis with that. How many of you have awakened in the morning and you find it's hard to open your eyes in the sense of them being glued together? We used to call that all that crusty stuff sometimes that you'd wake up with in your eye, they call it sleep. I've got sleep in my eyes. So we got an excess of something there, and it's dried out, and it's sort of cemented sometimes the eyelids together. But if we're doing things correctly, with everything's homeostatically balanced, then there's enough oil there to not be a problem, but keep the eyelids from sticking together. So that's one of the functions there. The eyelids have those sebaceous glands that help keep the eyelids from sticking together. Now, I want you to look, let's see, let's look down at the picture of the girl's eye on the left. It's figure 15.8. And you see the eyebrows. Some of you ladies remove some of them, some of the hairs there, but they're there to protect you. You see that picture, and so you see eyebrow. Now look at the next section in that second column, and you see eyebrows and eyelashes. Now eyebrows, they both, and the eyelashes serve as a protective measure. You see hairs along the ridge up here, and they prevent perspiration from running down into our eyes. If you're really sweating, you can overwhelm the eyebrows, but they do have a function. And if you also look at the first column on page 547, look at the first column and you see it says it also helps to reduce glare. We've got a little bit of an overhang over here. Some guys have a big overhang. Most girls don't have as big an overhang, but it's there for the purposes that they say. Some protection from the sweat rolling into your eyes, and also to break the glare. As you still look on page 547, look at that second sentence in that first column. It says there's stiff eyelashes or stiff hairs, and you keep reading there. We've got them on both lids. They are richly innervated by nerves, so anything that touches them, it makes us blink. It's a protective mechanism to cover a pretty delicate structure, although it's pretty durable too. And you see over back on page 546, the lady's eye. You see the eyebrows, you see the eyelashes. Nothing that you haven't been looking at for the last 18 years or since how old you are. So those things have their function. Now, as you look over on page 547, you see this word called conjunctiva, or some people say conjunctiva, which is fine. You hear it in both ways. And you see it's an epithelial membrane that lines the posterior surface of the eyelids and covers the front of the eyeball. Any of you ever had conjunctivitis or had somebody in your family that had that? Very irritating condition. That's right, Nani. Yeah, Katie, it's very uncomfortable. And someone has said to me that when they had it, it was like having sand in your eye, grit. That's got to be very uncomfortable because that's part of the body is a very sensitive organ. So that can become inflamed. Now I want you to notice something. You know that membrane? That's correct. Same thing, Shaniqua. It's called pink eye because the eye gets inflamed. Gets red because blood vessels are involved in there. So you got an inflammation and blood gets into that area and it turns it kind of reddish. Now, still dealing with the conjunctiva or conjunctiva. I want you to look down again on page 546. Page 546. And look at the illustration to the right. So we got a little side view. They've taken away part of this structure over here, these bones, the maxilla and so forth, part of the facial bone, of the frontal bone. So as you look at that eye, come down to the right-hand lower portion. And you see this word called the bulbar or ocular conjunctiva. Now I want you to follow the pointer. See the little black line? I want you to follow that pointer. And you notice it looks like a towel corner being pulled up or a sheet corner being pulled up. What they're doing is they're pulling up the conjunctiva. If you go straight up from where you see that being pulled up, which looks like a corner of a sheet or something being pulled up, just move up and you'll see one from the top. Now, look at the conjunctiva at the top, at the bottom, either way, and follow how it goes right up, right over to the upper eyelid, and down at the bottom, it goes to the bottom eyelid. So it covers the inside of your eyelids. And it also lies flat. It's not really flat, sort of a rounded shape, but you get, I think you understand what I'm saying. It lies on top of the eyeball. So it's possible if somebody got something in their eye that that object could drop down or maybe get pushed up for however reason. But let's look at just the bottom eyelid there. And something could get caught under there. Could be an eyelash. Could be a little piece of dust or a little shred of gravel or something like that. I hope it doesn't ever come to you where you have a little piece of steel in there, because that could cut tissues up pretty good. When I was a little kid, and I don't know where I got this idea, but I knew I'd get some things in my eye. A lot of times it's an eyelash, and I'd try and get a Q-tip. I was about 7, 8 years old. I get a Q-tip, try and pull it out of there. And I thought, oh, if it goes down too far, there's a bucket under there that would catch my eyelashes. That's what I thought as a 7-year-old kid. Thought there was a bucket under my eye that would catch those things that get in my eye. And it's kind of interesting how kids think, isn't it? But the conjunctiva there is to offer some protection. Now, as we said, it can get infected if you have an irritation in the eye and it's red and painful and itchy and so very uncomfortable, and you have pus being produced, then you have a bacterial infection. bacteria are notable in the sense that they produce pus. If you have a virus in there, virus is going to irritate the tissue too, but the virus doesn't produce pus. So if the doctor doesn't give you an antibiotic because he or she doesn't see pus, but they give you something to calm the nerves down, so to speak, and reduce the inflammation, then they know you've got a virus. And what we have to do with viral infections in most cases is we have to overcome them with our own immune system. You can't take an antibiotic for a virus. It's interesting. If you're going into nursing and you get to microbiology, then Mr. Malachowski will tell you about that, or I may if I'm still teaching microbiology at that point. But you got the picture. So another word is Shanika says conjunctivitis, conjunctivitis. Is that right? Conjunctivitis. Phew. Anyway, it takes a little while to get over. They call it pink eye because your eye gets red. Okay with that? Any questions about the conjunctiva? I'm going to say that because I've been saying that for 50 years. So let's go over to page 547. And as you look in that first column, you see the heading called lacrimal apparatus. So we've got several structures that compose this apparatus. So as you look at the picture down below, look at the illustration, and we're looking at that person's right eye. And the reason we're looking at that person's right eye is because you can see the nose and the eyes on this side of it. We're looking at that person straight in their face. So their right eye is on our left side as we look at it. As you look at the components of the lacrimal apparatus, you see it says lacrimal gland. A lot of people call it your tear gland. Not a problem with that. But sometimes they'll want you to use the medical term lacrimation. I don't get that convinced with lactation. What is lactation? Anybody know that? Lactation? What does lactation have to do with? That's right, Shaniqua. Yeah, Tamika, that's right. Elizabeth, that's correct. So don't get those two words mixed up. So it's easy to do. There are a lot of words that are very similar, so you got to know which one you're talking about. So you can call it the tear gland or the lacrimal gland, and you notice it's out here in that person's eye. It's out on the lateral part of their body. And then there's one over here. Now, there are little glands there, and you and I are making tears all day long. We're not crying. We're not overflowing the system, so to speak. But we're always making tears. The tears catch bacteria in the air. We don't think of our eyes as having bacteria on them, but they do. Because we're walking in a world that's full of bacteria. We're walking in a world that's full of fungi, little spores that sometimes irritate people. And they have an allergy to it. Sometimes you get little viruses in there. How do you get them out? When you close your eyes, we tend to think it occurs like this. I'll do it this way since we're looking at somebody's right eye. but they don't really close like this. They close like this. So the closure starts on the lateral surface over here. They call it a lateral canthus. They've got a couple of names for it. But your lid doesn't just close like that all at one time. It has a gradual mechanism that pushes the tears across the surface of the eye toward this, what we call a medial canthus. Of course, medial means midline, doesn't it? And so whatever has landed on the surface of our eyeball gets caught in that tear juice, that tear fluid, and then your eyelid slowly closes and pushes that fluid to this medial canthus. Now look at the ladies or the guys. I mean, it looks like a lady to me, but look at the eyes in this figure 15:9, and you see there are two little holes. You see the word punctum, P-U-N-C-T-U-M. Think of punctuation. Those are all those little marks that we make when we write letters, like a comma, like a period, like an exclamation point. But punct actually means point. And a lot of the punctuation marks have points in them. That's a hole. It's a hole. You've got one on the top lid, you have one on the lower lid. And so the tears flow into those little tiny holes. So whatever is bouncing, well, not doesn't bounce. Once it sticks to our eye, it stays there. But then we're blinking all day long. We don't even think anything about it. So those substances, those little organisms that we pick up during the day, get pushed into those little tubes called the lacrimal canals. Canaliculi is a Latin term, and of course a lot of Greek and Latin words are involved in medicine, various kinds of science. So anyway, they get pushed into those little tiny canals. And then you notice the canals lead to the lacrimal sac. So we have one on each side. When you were taking the bones of the skull, you were looking at the skull and you looked at the orbits. Then here was a nasal bone here. And then you moved into the orbit and you ran into what's called a lacrimal bone, and it's got a little groove. And that's where that lacrimal sac is sitting. It's in that lacrimal groove. Isn't that amazing? How those cells sort of encompass those bone cells, secrete hard bone, somewhat hard, not real heavy bone up here, but so that little sac has a little bit of protection around it. And then if you see the lacrimal sac and you come down, it gets narrower and it empties into our nose on either side. And so it's a flushing mechanism. The mechanism catches viruses, fungal spores, pollen, little tiny pieces of pollen or whatever, bacteria, and pushes it to these lacrimal punctum, puncti, I believe would be plural, or puncta. But the juice goes down, carries those little guys, and then they come into our nose. That's why you could swab inside there and put it on a slide with some water, and you probably loosen some things from the swab, and you could stain it. You might find pollen in there. You might find bacteria in there. All of that is normal. This is a good flushing mechanism. Anytime we disturb, anytime we have a problem with a flushing mechanism working properly, that can set us up for problems. If not only irritation, it could go to an infection. So it's important that these little flushing mechanisms are kept in good order. Sometimes people have to have these little drain holes, those lacrimal puncta, they have to have them enlarged. That's right, they have to have them enlarged. They have to go in with an instrument and push it down in there and stretch the tissue so that the tears can flow down into your nose. Wow. I'm so thankful it never has had to be done to me. Any question about the lacrimal apparatus? If you have no questions, then let's look at the second column on 547. And you see they're talking about extrinsic. You could even use the word, I guess, external eye muscles, because they're on the outside of the eye. And you come to the middle of that paragraph under extrinsic eye muscles, and you see superior, inferior, lateral, and medial rectus muscles. There are others. What does rectus mean? How about it, Katie? What does rectus mean? Any idea? Oh, Anna Grace. Yeah, Anna Grace. Let's see. Did I put you down here? Yep, I sure did. Good. Vertical. Okay, that's pretty close. Rectus actually means straight. No curve or anything like that. Yeah, that's good. That's good thinking there, Tamika. And we have a rectus femoris, don't we? Okay. That's good. Good thinking. So as you look on page 548, go over to page 548. We're not going to get into all the muscles. But as you look at this picture up top, figure 1510, you see they've taken away some of the zygomatic bone here. They've taken away some of the frontal bone. So they've exposed the orbit. You probably learned that the holes, those sockets in which the eye rests, often are called orbits. So as you look at the picture, up at the top, look at the right-hand image. And you see, starting with the top, you see superior rectus muscle. So that's on top and goes straight back to the back of the orbit. That's what enables you to move your eyeball up. Sometimes we don't move our head, we just move our eyes up. Then you come down in the middle of those two illustrations there, and you see medial rectus. That would be on this side of the eye. And so when that contracted, you would move your eye over your nose bridge, looking to your left or looking to your right. Some people have the ability to use those medial muscles to cross their eyes. Can you cross your eyes? Some people have told us, oh, don't do that, they'll get stuck. Never known that to be the case. That's kind of like bringing frogs in. You bring frogs in, you're going to get warts. I don't know that that's the case either, although we brought a lot of frogs in as kids. So you have a medial rectus that will move this eye in, but then at the same time, you've got to make the coordinated move. And so this eye uses the lateral rectus that pulls the eye that way. So both your eyes turn in the same direction. So they work together. You guys ever watch those National Geographic shows where they, I think, get a chameleon, I believe it is, a chameleon. And that animal's eyes, one can be looking this way and another one can be looking that way or down here. It's pretty wild stuff. They can both look out this way. They have a pretty good field of view there. I've never tried to practice that kind of activity. I don't know that I have that capability, but they can do that. And then you have an inferior rectus that's underneath each eye. And so when you contract that, you bring your eyes down. We've all done that. We look down, you sort of see your nose a little bit, whatever's on the floor or something like that. So those muscles move your eye. Now, are those muscles, tell me a feature of those muscles, a functional feature of those muscles, a characteristic, a functional characteristic of those muscles. Superior rectus, inferior rectus, lateral rectus, medial rectus. Anybody got a term that describes their function in the sense? We know this there to contract and move things, but you know anything that would describe the function? What's a characteristic of this muscle that you can move your eyeball around? How about the word voluntary? You can move your eyes at will. You can move your eyes at will. So if you can control them, what kind of muscle is that of the three types of muscle? Well, I'll let you think about it. I'm tying. Very good, Elizabeth. That's very good. I'm trying to get you to think and tie things together as we leave the muscles and now we move into an area that has muscles that are necessary. Just trying to get you to make those connections, okay? So it's skeletal, isn't it? Yeah, you've got control over it. Let's see. That takes care of the muscles. Now, let's come down on page 548. And we're going to look at this view of an eyeball. What kind of plane is this that we're looking at when we look at this eyeball? Okay, well, I'm going to let you think on it. Okay, good, Elizabeth. Good. You've hit two over the home run fence. That's good. I don't know if everybody else is sleeping, but I'm just trying to get you to think as you look at something like that. So you look at this sagittal section of the eye and look to the left, and you see this big bracket. And so what we want to do is cover those components. So the first thing you want to do is look at the fibrous layer. And you see the fibrous layer consists of two parts, the sclera and the cornea. Now, let's look over on page 549. A couple of things you want to highlight or make some notes on. You see in the first column, you come down to where you see the eyeball and the layers of the eyeball and the fibrous layer. And you see it says the outermost layer has two parts, the sclera and the cornea. You see it says the sclera, the white part of the eye. One of those things they taught us in the military sometimes says, wait till you see the white of their eyes. If you can wait and see the white of their eyes, you have a better chance of hitting your enemy with a rifle round. So the white part of the eye, and you don't have to worry about it, it covers about 80% of the eye. But I want you to come down to right at the little lower right corner of that core principle box. And you see over to the right, it says the sclera's numerous collagen fibers allow it to resist deformation from external and internal forces and maintains its shape. These fibers are arranged irregularly. We've talked about fibers being arranged irregularly before, right? Dense, irregular connective tissue. Strong stuff. Have you got into lab? Have you gotten into looking at the brain and the eye and the model of the ear? Or maybe you're not even doing that. Maybe you're just using models. Have you gotten this to cut open a cow eye or a sheep eye? Well, that sclera is pretty tough. Now you can penetrate it. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Okay, maybe you'll do that a little bit later. So the sclera is pretty tough. It's the white of the eye. And so you see the fibers are irregularly shaped, so light doesn't get through there easily. Come to the next paragraph, and it says the sclera is continuous with the cornea in the anterior of the eye. Unlike the sclera, the cornea is translucent. Now, trans means through, doesn't it? And lucent is a word associated with light. You remember who Satan was called before he decided to rebel against God? He was called Lucifer, light. But he made a bad choice, got on the wrong side of the fence. So it's translucent. Light comes through the cornea. How many of you wear contacts? Think about that. That's what you hang your contacts on, is the cornea. It wraps over the surface of the cornea. As you look at the cornea back on page 548, you see how it has a little bulge. And that bulge enables you to put contacts on there. You press them in and they stay right in place for the most part. Some of you are real glad you got contacts. A lot of people don't like wearing glasses like this. So it's nice that they can do that. So the cornea is clear. It lets light come in. And notice back of that paragraph on page 549, as you come down to where it says the cornea is translucent. So we know light can come in. The cornea is translucent due to its orderly parallel arrangement of collagen fibers. That's like dense, regular connective tissue where the fibers are all aligned. It works. Light goes through. Sometimes you can scratch that cornea. Not fun. Not fun. So you don't want to try and do that. That's why sometimes when you get something in your eye, you don't want to rub it, although we do. But it's good to take the eyelid and pull it away from the eyeball, and that takes the pressure off of the object. Sometimes you have to hold it for a little while, and you can bring your lid down, and it can make you cry a little bit, and sometimes that'll flush a speck of dust or whatever that's irritating. It's kind of like having a rock in your shoe. Sometimes that can be real painful. Well, much more so up here. It's very painful if you can do that. Everybody okay with the sclera and the cornea? Okay. Let's go to back on page 548 to what they call the vascular layer. And you see the first thing is the iris. Now don't call it the Irish. That means something from Ireland. My wife's got ancestors from Ireland. We're all immigrants to some degree, aren't we? Yeah. So iris, like a flower, and we got different colors, don't we? So there's your iris. And let's go over and talk about that for just a minute. Let's go over to page 549 and look at the second column. This is under what they call vascular layer. And come down to the third term, the iris. And you see it says, or the colored portion of the eye is the extension of the vascular layer just anterior to the ciliary body. Now we're going to tie that in a few minutes. Now you have all probably played with your irises to some degree, and maybe looking in the mirror and you dim the light and you watch your iris open up or whatever. So let's look at that event. The iris, come down to the next paragraph under number 3. You're not the first paragraph, but come down to the second one. The iris surrounds the circular pupil. The pupil is a hole. It's not an entity, like your muscle in your back or something like that. Excuse me. But notice what it says. It's got a hole in the center, and that's where light comes in. You know that. I'm not telling you anything new, I don't think. But here we get into the iris contains 2 muscles, and we want to know those muscles. You see the one called the Pupillary Sphincter. The Pupillary Sphincter. Can you tell me where you have a sphincter in your body? Not yet. Okay, I appreciate your honesty there, Shay. Not yet. You'll learn about them in the second half, maybe, of the semester. But we see them operate. Okay, they're in the stomach. You're right. Anna Grace is correct. We've actually got several sphincters in our body, and they control the movement of things. And in this case, this helps control the entrance of light, the movement of light into your the back of your eye. So notice what this says about the pupillary sphincter. Now you're talking about a circular muscle, okay? Closes down, opens up, okay? In our case, we're thinking about evacuating bowels or something like that, or moving stuff out of the stomach or receiving it through the esophagus. You'll find out about those sphincters that we have. So you see it says the pupillary sphincter muscle contracts following the parasympathetic stimulation and constricts the pupil to reduce the amount of light entering in the eye. So it closes down and therefore prevents as much light entering your eye. I'm sure all of you have driven at night, and you have noticed some cars just seem to have brilliant lights. You don't want to look at those because they will destroy, not physically destroy, but they'll sort of turn off your night vision. And when that bright light comes in, it sort of blinds you for a second. And then you wonder, whoa, where's the road? Where's the road? So anytime you're driving, and I'm sure your dad's told you, or the girl at the Department of Transportation of Motor Vehicles, says, don't look at the headlights coming towards you, even though they're real bright. Sometimes people forget to dim them. If you look at them, you can go sort of blind for a few minutes, not for a few minutes. So you always look over to the right side of your car where your headlight over here on the right is. And you don't have that sort of problem when you're driving. That's correct, Katie. There's a pyloric sphincter in your stomach, like Tamika was saying. She didn't give me a name for it, but that's where it is. Right, there's a couple of sphincters in there. That's good, Katie. So, as you see, when it contracts, it reduces it. You look at the picture down at the bottom, you see the iris in the middle. That's what we would think of as sort of in the middle of letting light in and preventing some light to come in. So whenever that pupillary sphincter contracts, you move to your left there. See that picture? That little tiny, that pupil goes, closes it down. How many of you have been to the doctor and they've done, let's say some of you have glasses on, and one of the things they might do is dilate your eyes. They'll just say you dilate your eyes. What you do is you dilate your iris. And that allows that opening to get bigger. The sphincter muscle, is it voluntary or involuntary? We're tying stuff together, okay? We're putting it together. Is it voluntary or involuntary? Oh, shoot. No, don't tell me that. Shaniqua, that's correct. It's an involuntary muscle. You don't have to think about doing that. It's the circuit is already established. Control over that. Okay, but there is control, right? It's just not conscious control. Now, think about what we just got through looking at and learning back in chapter 11. Let's think about a neuron. Here are the little dendrites. They're going to come from your brain or whatever. And here's a cell body. And here's a little axon that comes out and attaches to the pupillary sphincter. What would that junction be called? Where the telodendria attach to the pupillary sphincter. Talked about it back in chapter 10. See, we're bringing stuff up. It's gonna follow you all the way into 211. And if you get me in 225, if you're a nurse, well, okay, I'll say it again. Tamika and Anna, let's see. Here you've got you've got an axon that's coming from your brain, and it attaches to the pupillary sphincter. Oh, shucks. Some of you can't hear anything. What is the junction of the telodendria and the pupillary sphincter muscle? What do you call that when they're attached to each other? Might have a question like that, see? You've known things separated, but you got to put it together. They call it a neuromuscular junction. Ooh, that's heavy, wasn't it? Now, you guys can do that, but you got to start thinking along those lines. I had to do the same thing. You can know what this is and what this is, but if you don't know how they come together and work, well, a tight junction, that's a good guess, Real Goddess, but a tight junction is not a neuromuscular junction. A tight junction is where a muscle is attached to a nerve so that impulses can come down the nerve and make the muscle contract. Tight junctions are there to hold structures together, not transmit impulses. So you won't say that on the quiz, will you, Kira? No. Okay? So it's involuntary, but let's go back to what we were talking about in the first place. Some of you've had your eyes dilated. So maybe they put a chemical that's like a neurotransmitter that causes that muscle to contract or not contract, and it opens it up. It's going to work on the muscle. It's going to work on maybe the neuromuscular junction or myoneural junction, depending on what you're talking about. But that's what they do when they want to dilate your eyes. Okay, let's look at the second one, pupillary dilator muscle. Okay, pupillary dilator muscle down at the bottom of that page. You see what happens? It dilates. When would your iris do that? When would that muscle pull back the iris so that it was a wider circle, a wider opening? What would be the condition that would occur in? How about being in a dark room or walking out in the backyard at 9 o'clock at night when the sun's gone down and it's dark, and that pupillary sphincter opens? A dark room, that's right. It's a dark room. Walk out at night and look at the stars. So it will open up to let more light come into the inside of the eye. Okay, so read up on that. Make sure you understand that. Okay. All right. You wouldn't be in a condition to make it dilate, not dilate, excuse me. You wouldn't be in the condition that you would want it to, you would be in the condition where you want it to dilate. That's because there's not enough light coming into your eye. Okay? So, let's do this. Let's go back to page 549. And under vascular layer, you see choroid. And what we've done is we've covered the iris. It's sort of an extension of the choroid. And you see, it says the most extensive component of the vascular layer. What does it mean when you say it's vascular? Well, we better move on because we're 1:36 now. We only got a few more minutes. Got a lot of blood vessels, okay? Because you got a lot of cells in there that need blood, they need oxygen, they need energy. So there's a lot of blood vessels in there, as well as a pigment that helps. Good, very good. Shaniqua and Anna. So they get plenty of nourishment, and it's got color to it, and that helps to reduce some glare that would happen inside the back of the eye. Number two, we want to look at that for a moment. Ciliary body. Now I want you to look over on page 548. Look at figure 1511 again. And you come over to the left on that left diagram where you see layers of the eyeball, vascular layer, iris. We mentioned the iris and the choroid. Now you got ciliary body. It's this little pink section. Got some up top, got some on the bottom. That ciliary body and its muscle go all the way around behind the iris. It's all the way around, okay? Now notice, coming from the ciliary body, these little strings. And those little strings, as you see the top of that diagram in 1511, you see suspensory ligaments. So imagine the ciliary body. Here come all these little ligaments going into the center, and they attach to the lens. Picture the sun. We can't look at the sun straight on, can we, unless you got some kind of protection. And all the little rays that come off from the sun, you know how people draw things like that? Think of the sun as the lens and the rays as the suspensory ligaments. And let's say that there was a situation where a cloud had a hole in it, and the cloud would be the ciliary body, and the rays would be attached to the clouds and the sun. So you're saying, okay, I kind of get that. I see the connections anatomically. So what are we talking about? What's so important about this? You got a little muscle in your ligaments, and it changes the shape of the lens. When you change the shape of the lens, you're focusing the light on what we call the retina. That's how we focus the light coming in on the retina, that screen in the back. And it's a clear image. One of the challenges for some people as they get older could be a number of things. But the lens might not be as flexible as it used to be when they were children or teenagers or middle age or something like that. So they have to start wearing these glasses. But the ciliary body contracts and relaxes without your thinking. The circuit is already set up. So if I look at this cup that's about 2 feet away from me on the other side of this computer, everything's in focus, and then I can look up, and 15 feet away is a light switch with 3 switches in it. And they're in focus. So my lens has changed. How does it know that? We don't have an answer. It's amazing, and we don't have to think about it. Okay, 5 clicks down, 10 clicks up, or something like that. It does it automatically. So you don't have control over that. But when it doesn't work, sometimes we have to go get some classes like this that help you a little bit. So there's another involuntary muscle. It'd be a visceral muscle. Beautiful piece of work here. Okay, so we've covered the choroid, we've covered the ciliary body and the suspensory ligaments, we've covered the iris. So we're over on page 550. Let's pick out a few things here that I want you to know, and then we'll close the day. As you look on 550 and you come down to the first column, you see in the second half of it, it says neural layer. Gonna have nerves, isn't it? And they call that the retina. Don't call it the retina. Okay, call it the retina. And you see it says it's the neural layer. That's where all these photoreceptors are located. Well, when you get to looking at those, you just think, my land, they all came from one cell and they knew what to do. These are cells that have an unusual shape. But you see that the retina contains all these photoreceptors. Now look over in the second column, and I want you to come to the second paragraph, and you see fovea centralis. Fovea centralis. Look to your left, and you see where they're pointing. That's the center of the retina. It is really full in the center of photoreceptors. So when we're looking straight on something, we can see a lot of detail. A lot of photoreceptors there. That fovea centralis is in a little section they call the Macula Lutea. The Macula Lutea. Now, lutea means yellow. And sometimes people have a disease they call macular degeneration. That means in the center of their retina, those photoreceptors are dying. They don't work like they used to. They're degenerating. and to some extent you're going blind. We don't have a cure for that. We've got some things that will slow the degeneration down, but it won't get rid of it. It won't stop it and reverse it. Some people have gotten shots in the eye. A little needle and push it in there, put some stuff in, and it seems to slow down the progress of degeneration. Well, Sonia, oh, I'm sorry, you're just coming in. We're about to close the door here. But I'm going to write some notes up like I've done before. So you want to know the fovea centralis, you want to know the macula lutea, and you can read about the optic disc and play with it down below. And so when we come back on Tuesday, that's good, Sonia. I'm glad you can do that. Seems like it's worked pretty well today. Then we'll get into the cavities and chambers of the eye. Okay? If you have no questions, I am going to end the stream. I'm getting hungry. All this work, talking. It's what they pay me to do, isn't it? To talk. Your exam is going to be next Thursday. That's going to be on Chapter 10 and Chapter 11. Okay, you heard me, didn't you, Kira? Elizabeth asked that question, so it's next Thursday on Chapter 10 and Chapter 11. All right. So I'll bid you goodbye and hope you have a good weekend. I'll see you later. Bye-bye.